How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK MMA. If you've never watched the show, we preview an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we got a banger. It's that highly anticipated rematch between welterweight champion Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. We'll get into that in a second here, but first, want to remind our audience a couple things. Number one, if you're watching this live, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you guys have a question, submit it now, submit it later, doesn't matter. We break down the fight first, then we do a Q&A after. We like to stick to the fight itself, but if you guys want to talk about anything, there's been a lot going on in the MMA industry, in the MMA world, so we're happy to talk about that here as well. And make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. Still got to get my PFL picks in, but I will do that. It's always something I do at the last minute, but I'll get them in. We got PFL, we got UFC, we got a bunch of stuff going on. And also make sure you tune into the end. John and I always give our underdog picks of the week, so we'll be getting into that. And my underdog pick came through last week. Got to brag a little bit off the top, man. Did I not call this? Ray Cooper coming through, getting it done over Rory McDonald. So, just saying. How you doing, buddy? How's everything going?
Good. For the people that are watching this live, thank you for joining us. For the people on the replay, make sure if you got a comment, put them in the bottom, where the comments go, and we'll get to those. And yeah, man, I'm doing good. I can't wait to talk about this fight because this fight is one of the best rematches I think we're going to have in a long time.
Might be the best rematch we've seen this year. If you look at rematches, across the board, it's going to be great. This is the part of the show where I say, JHK, how did we get here, man? How did this fight come together? I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to let the video do the talking, and then we'll get into that. So, producer Mike, lead it over.
You didn't break my face. I got right up and protested it right away. That was a fake stoppage, fake ref, fake fight. Wait till I see you next time. Wait till I see you next time, Marty Fake Newsman. You're dead. You're dead. We got unfinished business.
Wow. Someone should tell Colby, sir, this is a McDonald's. No, I'm joking. But no, look, this... I will say this, of anyone in this industry who knows Colby Covington, I'm probably one of the few, myself, Submission Radio. There's a few of us who have interviewed Colby over the years, know Colby quite well. That was real. He does not like him. Usman does not like him. This is a real rivalry. This isn't something phony. This isn't something fake. They genuinely hate each other. And the thing that's so great about this rematch as well is that it goes beyond just two guys fighting, right? There's some political stuff. We're not going to get into that, but you know what I'm saying here, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in this climate these days. Colby's part of, Team Trump, which, is not a thing anymore, but still there's a lot of people who hate him for that. So this just adds so much more. Like I'm trying to even think in UFC history, have we had a rivalry like this that has gotten political as well? Like it's just there's so much at stake here. So that's part of the reason we got here is that they had to do this rematch. We've been talking about this for a while. I mean, this was, I know there's going to be people today in the chat being like, oh, Leon Edwards, Luque, whoever should have got the shot, but this was the fight to make. They have to settle this score here. And I'm so glad it's coming together. And look, how we got here is, and this is something people forget, because I always want to bring this up because people always forget this. Why is Colby getting the shot? Well, you're right. He only had one fight. It was against Woodley. We'll get into that in a sec. Colby was also an interim champion. I think a lot of people forget that, and that's got to count for something in terms of getting matchups and doing things. Like, I know it's just, it's not an official title, but he didn't technically get to defend that, right? Like it was one of those things where the UFC was just like, okay, we're moving on. We're going to strip you. I feel like that got lost in the shuffle. And I feel like that was any other fighter. We'd be hearing more about that, but we don't because people hate Colby so much. So we got here because they had to settle the score. It's a highly anticipated fight. It's a great storyline. And we haven't even talked about this. Their first fight was great. Really good fight. I remember going in, people thinking this is going to be boring, two wrestlers. No, it was the exact opposite. Compelling fight leading into the fifth round, with Usman getting the finish. But yeah, that's why we're here. It's a great storyline. It goes beyond the sport, and it's a great fight. And it's just so rare to have all three of those things as a combination leading into a fight like this. So your thoughts on how we got here?
I love how we got here, man. I love that side-by-side just trash talk. It was just so real, you know what I mean? And it was great from both sides. It wasn't just like a one-sided, back and forth. You got Usman saying, I broke your face. And he's telling the truth. It's facts, right? And then Colby fired back like, you're dead. That's pretty much all you can say to him, right? Because he did break his face and finish him in the fifth round. I love this fight. I think that this is the fight that you should put together while you can. And I think that's what the UFC is doing. Because if Colby goes out there, it's possible that he will lose against a top contender. If he loses, it's hard to put him again in a title fight. So they need to put him in now. And this is the fight that has steam. And I don't think the political side, I feel like that's more of the first fight. This fight is just solid MMA, back and forth hatred for each other, and I don't like you as a person, and I want to beat your face in, and that's what I love about the fight.
I disagree there just slightly, only because there's people, and we're not going to dig into this. This is not a political podcast, but I just want to throw this out here and kind of lob it out there and see what people in the chat say and all that. There's a lot of people who feel like Colby's racist. It's the truth. I get it all the time. I have people, I think I told you this last time I interviewed Colby. Someone said to me, why don't you go interview War Machine? It's the same thing. There are people who feel that Colby Covington is as bad as a domestic abuser who's in jail right now. So it just goes to show there's a lot of people, like, you're on one side or the other. You don't really hear many people in between with Colby, right? It's like they hate him or they love him. Colby's the best. He's so funny. And then there's people, he's cringe, he's terrible, he's racist. So there's that side of it as well. Again, we're not a political show here, but I do want to acknowledge that, because I think that is something where you're going to see a lot of people, sort of go against Colby, and vice versa. There's people who, definitely like Colby as well. But anyways, let's get into the tail of the tape here. Start with the champ, Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman right now, and I was looking at some of the, just before we hopped on here, I was looking at some of the fighters, some of the performances this year. Usman right now is in the running for fighter of the year. Absolutely. with what he's been able to do. 34 years old, 6 feet tall with a 76-inch reach. Colby Covington, 33 years old, 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. So Usman a little bit bigger, but that's the other awesome thing about this fight. We're getting two guys who are really in the prime of their careers right now, right? Like it's actually, like, it's so rare to have all these things come together with a fight like this as well. We know what Usman's done since the first Colby fight. So first Colby fight finished him in the 5th round, got it done. A little bit of revisionist history on that fight, because I see a lot of people, and again, you're going to have a lot of this from other people when it comes to breaking down this fight, but we're going to shoot it to you straight here. It was a close fight. People telling you otherwise, people saying Usman was destroying Colby, I disagree. Those rounds were razor close. I think it could have gone either way. Personally, I remember scoring it 2-2 going into the 5th. Now, look, could it have been 3-1 Usman? No complaints there. There were some rounds that were very close. They were, sort of back and forth type thing. Obviously, Usman won, but very close first fight. So don't let anyone else tell you that. It's the same people who still think that Rafael dos Anjos beat Covington in the interim fight. That never happened either. So that was their first fight. Since then, beat Masvidal. Masvidal took that fight on short notice. Great performance by Usman. But it wasn't one of those fights where I think people were surprised, because, you were expected to beat Masvidal. There's a clear way to beat him. Masvidal had been beaten by guys before the same way, like with Maya, like with Wonder Boy. You get in Masvidal's fate, you be the aggressor. It's pretty easy to take you out. So that was the fight after Colby Covington, which was in July. Then he fought Gilbert Burns. That was the fight that I think really showed an evolution and a level in Kamaru Usman, and that was the first camp he had. I think it was the first, or no, I guess initially he was supposed to fight Burns, and then Masvidal stepped in. But either way, he switched camps. He fights Burns, his good friend, and he finishes him in a fight that you and I did a live stream for. You can go back and watch our reactions to that. But that was a fight where you could clearly see Usman had leveled up, because not only was that the first loss for Gilbert Burns in the welterweight division, it was the first stoppage loss he's had since the Dan Hooker fight, which was at lightweight. And if you watch that fight, Gilbert had a bad weight cut. I think that played a role in him getting knocked out in that fight. So that was a huge win. And then to follow that up, fighting Masvidal again and finishing him in the 2nd round. Incredible. You look at how long Masvidal's been fighting, how many times he's been stopped. First knockout loss, I think, for him, at least first one at welterweight. I don't have the data in front of me here, but super impressive fight. I think he's leveled up since going to Trevor Whitman. And you just look at the fact that this guy hasn't lost since a fight on the regional scene back in his second pro fight back in May of 2013. He's looked unstoppable, and he's got some great wins on top of that. I think one of the wins we don't talk enough about, even though it was back in 2017, is Sean Strickland. Look at the run that Sean Strickland has gone on. It's been pretty remarkable there. Beat Maya, beat RDA, beat Woodley decisively, beat Woodley at his own game. I was at that fight. That was incredible. I remember a lot of people felt like Woodley was going to win that. Did not end up happening. Usman's incredible. And he's definitely, I won't put him there yet, but he's definitely in the running for being one of the greatest welterweights of all time. So just your thoughts on Kamaru Usman and the evolution in his game at his age.
With Usman, I think he became the Nigerian nightmare after he became the champion, because before he was a champion, he would beat guys and dominate guys. But you remember, he was only going 30%, right? So we get the 100% Usman. And when you look at what he's done so far, like you said, the Colby Covington fight, the first fight, Colby Covington, I'm going to tell you, he won the first round. He won. He outstruck, if you look at the numbers, he outstruck Usman in that round. He was clipping Usman. Second round, very tight round right there. A lot of people gave it to Colby, right? He was clipping him. He was using but the thing about that fight is that 3rd round, you know what I mean? Like, that's when I believe the jaw was broken, and then kind of like the tide turned somewhat. but Colby was still in the fight the whole time, man.
Mm.
It wasn't like a clear knockout in the 5th round. It was a TKO. Like Colby was going for the legs, trying to go for the single leg. You know, he was getting beat on for a good 20, 30 seconds, but you could have let that fight go. And I think Colby would have survived. This is just my opinion, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or Usman would have knocked, but I feel like Colby would have survived. That's how tough Colby is. And that's why he, you know, protested the stoppage. And a lot of people, you know, like Cole Shelton in the comments, he's saying that he gave Colby 3-1. You know what I mean? That's arguably, I could see that. You know what I mean? I could
100%.
see, you know, Colby having 3-1. But Usman went in there in the 5th and knocked him out, right? Then he comes back and he fights Masvidal. And that fight was interesting because he used like a different game plan against Masvidal, right? Like he's not a guy that goes out there and fights the same anymore. He just fights to his opponent. Like, what is the clearest path to victory? And I feel like the Gilbert Burns performance was the best performance of his championship reign, because when you go back and just look at his style of fight in the 1st and 2nd round, he only used the jab the whole time. He just used the jab and kicks, and he was switching stances on Gilbert. You know what I mean? People say Gilbert knocked him down in the 1st round, right? But I feel like he kind of slipped and kind of fell down a little bit after getting hit. So, but Gilbert, you know, hit him really well. You know, he hit him hard in that fight. It's not like he didn't clip him. But Usman came back, and after he established the jab, he went in there with that overhand right and clipped, you know, Gilbert a few times. And then in the, I believe in the 3rd round, he clipped him he hit him with the jab and knocked him down. And that was the beginning of the end. But a lot of people say, oh, he knocked him out with the jab. No, he set that jab up to the 1st and 2nd round the whole time, man. If you watch the fight again, you'll see that going through. And then that's that fight IQ developing. And then after that, he fights Masvidal again. And it almost seemed like he knew that he was going to go in there and do exactly what he did, was go in there and knock out Masvidal. It's weird, right? Because Masvidal did pretty well on the feet in the 1st fight, but in the 2nd fight, Usman was completely dominant, man. It was just insane, the development through just his championship reign. It's almost unbelievable, man. I don't think we've seen a champion do that in recent memory.
No, absolutely not. Incredible performance from Usman in that last fight. Okay, let's talk about Colby Covington. Talked about the tail of the tape there earlier. Just the one fight with Tyron Woodley. He did finish Woodley. That is one thing that I think a lot of people kind of forget. I know it was a rib injury, but I mean, Colby, you know, it contributed to that rib injury. And I know, look, like, you know, Luque finished Woodley in the 1st round. Clearly, Woodley is not the old Woodley. Colby did what he had to do. He got the job done. I don't think you can overanalyze that fight too much, you know, because people are like, well, look at Woodley. He's lost a bunch of fights. That still beat him, and he still finished him. That's impressive in itself. You know, there's some people were debating with me yesterday on my Victory Loves Company podcast with Jim West about, you know, who has the better resume, Leon Edwards or Colby Covington. They're very similar, right? They fought a lot of similar opponents. You know, the fact that he outstruck Rafael Dos Anjos to win the interim title, I know this was in 2018, still very impressive, right? You look at who Dos Anjos has beat, including Kevin Lee and so many other fighters at a high level. That was a good win. Robbie Lawler was a good win. You know, I remember people saying Robbie's going to knock Colby out. That never happened. And Colby played, you know, the game with Robbie where he outstruck Robbie Lawler. And I think he knew at a certain point that Robbie's not the old Robbie. Jung Young Kim was a good win. Maya was a good win. Remember, that was what started this whole Brazil thing, was after the fight and beating him. Has a knockout win over Max Griffin. How many times do you see Max Griffin finish in a fight? Doesn't happen too often. So again, a lot of people are wearing sort of different glasses when it comes to Colby in his career, but you got to look at the tail of the tape. You got to go back and look at those fights and look at some of the performances he has. And one thing you can't deny, and I know the guy kind of makes a joke out of it, but his cardio is some of the best in the division. It really is. Like the fact that, like you were saying, he got hurt in that fight with Usman, still persevered and still managed to push through to the 5th round is incredible. And I think there is, you know, I think people do sort of glance over that a little bit. The other thing is that Colby trains with, I don't know what he's done this camp, but Cameron Haynes. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a like the strength and conditioning guy. He does, I think it's Cameron Haynes. Who's the guy who does like, or not Cameron Haynes? Who's the guy that Colby works with that does like, the like strength conditioning and all that stuff. It's like he does like mountain running basically. He's one of the guys that's been like Colby's secret weapon for a while, and he does you know, that type of that type of stuff when it comes to like, yeah, it is Cameron Haynes. I'm right. So yeah, he's the he runs roughly 22 miles a day, this Cameron Haynes guy, and Colby linked up with him a couple of years ago, and it's really been an asset for him, and I think something that people sort of underrate a lot here. A couple other things with Colby I want to mention to the table. Yeah, he's not been as active as Usman. That's clear. Part of that though is, you know, making sure he's getting the right fights. Like John said, you don't want him to fight another contender and lose his spot. There's a lot on the line here for Colby and his brand and so many other things, right? So he's got to be strategic about it. But is the time off bad or is it good? Maybe he's picking up new things. We got to remember he's going to be fighting Usman under a new camp, right? He had the obviously the last fight against Woodley under MMA Masters, but think about this. There's no distractions for him. When he fought Usman the first time, he's got Poirier, Joanna, Masvidal, all these people. You know, that I don't care who you are. You can be the most focused person ever. That's got to weigh on you a little bit. So I do think that camp-wise, it'll be a little bit more specialized to him going into this fight, and I think that's an advantage. I also don't know how good Colby is, right? Like, you look at like the Brian Ortega and Zombie fight. There's a great example, right? Where you saw what Ortega did against Holloway, and then he comes back and he looks completely different in a fight against Zombie and actually beats Zombie at his own game. Maybe that could happen here with Colby. We don't know. Because the thing is, while Colby hasn't fought, maybe he's getting better. We don't know. That's the thing. Like, there's a big wild card here with Colby in terms of the time off and not getting to fight as much. But I don't know. Like, I think with how Colby trains and how he is, I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to, you know, suffer from any sort of cage rust. He's had gaps in his career before and still performed at a high level. So I don't think that's going to be as big of a factor as some people are making it out to be as well. But I think Colby has the ability to beat Kamaru Usman. I might as well just get to my pick right now. We'll just sort of dig into this a little bit. I'm going Usman. I have to go Usman. If you look at what we've seen over the last little bit in terms of Usman's evolution and him getting so much better and his stand-up improving tremendously, the thing is, John, we've seen evolution in Usman. We've seen it in the fights. We haven't seen that from Colby. I can't make a pick based off what might be of a fighter when we've actually seen it, you know, up close with Kamaru Usman. But there is one thing I do want to point out, and that is these Masvidal fights, because I feel like people are acting like Masvidal is a legit contender. And let's get real here. Great win over Ben Askren. Nice win over Nate Diaz. Under any other circumstance, that is not enough to get you a title shot. It's because of the fact that Masvidal had such a good 2019, the BMF title. He's got a huge fan base. You know, there is sort of an entertainment side of things. I don't think Masvidal was worthy of a title shot when he got one. So the fact that Usman beat him, I don't think is as impressive as people are making it out to be. Now, finishing him the way he did in that last fight, I'll give him full credit for that. But I feel like people are fixated a little bit too much on that. And if you look at outside of that, the Burns win, like you said, is probably his best win. Because if Burns fought Colby right now, I don't know who wins that fight. If Masvidal fights Colby, I'm picking Colby all day. That's a bad matchup for Masvidal. They've trained together. Colby's even mentioned how, you know, the wrestling is always going to be a factor for him. That's something interesting as well in terms of level of competition. But outside of that, they fought pretty much the same fighters. In fact, that was a running joke with Colby for a while, was that Usman was fighting Colby's quote unquote sloppy seconds. And you know, that's sort of true. But I think with Usman, we have seen, like I said, the proof of an evolution where we haven't really seen that from Colby because we haven't seen him fight. So I'm going to pick Usman. Does he finish Colby? I think it's possible. Maybe I'll stick with the finish. I'll go with that just because, like I said, his hands are really sort of going a long way. The one thing I do wonder in this fight is, are we going to see some wrestling here? If Colby feels like he's not getting the better of Usman on the feet, does he go for that wrestling? And if so, is he more successful than Colby? We'll have to find out. But the safe pick right now is to go with Usman. But I'm telling you guys this. Colby Covington, compared to a lot of other welterweights in that division, I believe has the ability to beat Usman. The question is, has he done enough in the gym to do that and combat that? Because, and again, I'll get your pick in 1 second, but there's so many implications going into this. Think about this. What happens if Colby loses? Where the heck does he go from here? I see people saying, well, Colby can fight Luque, Colby can fight. He's not going to fight those guys. In fact, I would be willing to bet this might be the end of Colby's career if he loses this fight. Whether it's in the UFC or maybe he goes somewhere else, or I don't know, but there's so much on the line here for Colby. I just, knowing Colby the way I do and knowing the type of businessman he is, and I think looking at all the BS he's had to deal with behind the scenes from getting these fights and, you know, having this fight delayed for as long as it was, right? Like, because, you know, they wanted, if Nate Diaz had beat Edwards, you know, they were going to do that fight, right? So there's all these politics behind the scenes. I'm just saying this right now. There could be, this could be the last we see of Colby in the octagon. I know he's got a contract. I know there's all these other things doing this, but just, you know, knowing what type of businessman Colby is, I could see him just saying, I'm done with this. I'll see you later. But if Colby wins, man, that's going to turn the division upside down. Nobody's given this guy a shot. I'm doing the pros picks already. I think there's maybe one fighter I've done interviewed so far that's picking Colby. If he wins, man, that is going to shake things up. And I'm all here for it because I can't wait to see people's heads explode if that does happen. But just wanted to mention all that. I've rambled on enough. John, your pick, your assessment of Colby. Let's hear it all because I've been rambling on a lot here.
Well, with Colby, you know what I mean? Like the talking points will be his inactivity, right? And when you look at his performance against Woodley, was it that great of a performance? Because when you look at Woodley and his last couple of fights, did he look that great? You know what I mean? Not at all, right? So when you look at a comeback fight, a rebound fight, that was perfect for Colby. Why? Because he can get in there and get a win, and then he gets the title shot. But I don't think we've seen that much out of him in that fight. And he fought that fight completely differently than he fought against Usman. You know what I mean? The Usman fight was a straight up stand up war. And the Woodley fight, he went in there pressuring with takedowns and trying to get, work on the ground. So with Colby, man, he's like this big question mark heading into this fight because he's, like you said, he's with a new team. Is his structure of his camps as good as American Top Team? But then at the same time, he doesn't have the headaches of American Top Team and everybody trying to step up to him in the training room and him being, thinking like he can't trust people, with his training camp and stuff like that. It's not swirling around him anymore. So he's heading into this fight maybe with a clearer head, and he doesn't have that pressure of Trump and the MAGA stuff going on. Of course, he still represents it some way somehow, but not really that pressure, right? Trump's not going to be there. And he has little Wayne, man. He has little Wayne walking him out, and that shows you that maybe he's not racist, right? That's maybe his way of telling everybody, like, hey, I'm cool with everybody, right?
Well,
I don't know.
So sorry to interject. He also, I don't know if this is strategic or not, but he does those picks, right, for my bookie. Yeah. Every now and then he'll get an African-American woman in there as well. I think that's part of it as well. And also, he does Candace Owens' the show. He's a conservative commentator who's also African-American. So I feel like that's maybe a subtle way of Colby saying, look, like, I'm not racist, whatever. I don't know if that's strategic or not, but yeah, just wanted to point that out.
Well, the thing is, like, he said things that are extremely racist and borderline racist, and and you could hide behind the persona, right?
Yeah,
maybe your persona is maybe your persona's that way, and maybe the person is not that way. But a lot of people don't agree with it either way. You know what I mean? Like, they don't like it no matter what. So, this is your opinion. If you feel that like he's this way, we separate that from the fight. We're looking at the fight against Usman, and he's extremely talented. He's one of the guys, I agree with you, James, that has the ability, that has the skills, that has the cardio and the wrestling to defeat Usman. He has that ability, but it has to be one of those perfect nights. And
I was just going to say that he can't make a single mistake in this fight. Otherwise, and with a guy like Usman, you just can't afford it. For example, I'll just say that I would favor, I think Colby has a better shot in this fight than Leon Edwards, than even Luque. I know Luque's got some good knockout power and stuff. Colby just, there's a little part of his game that's a little bit different than other people. The cardio, the wrestling, even the stand-up, I think, has improved a lot. There's like that little inkling of like, okay, this could be a championship. There could be championship material here. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
And also he's a southpaw, and that gave Usman a lot of problems in that first fight. I'm telling you, man, Colby hit Usman. I watched the fight like right before we did this show, man, again, and he clipped him a bunch of times with hard shots. And Usman has a granite chin, man. Like, the dude is tough, and he has a good poker face. But I know he was hurt with a couple of those shots, and I think Colby's going to be able to get through with those shots again. And I think like he's going to go in there and wrestle. I feel like that's going to be the difference maker in this fight. He's going to try to wrestle, try to take him down. And Usman's going to play that game too. I don't think Usman's going to come out and try to brawl. I don't think they're going to brawl in this fight. I think it's going to be more strategic, right? It's more about getting the win rather than beating the shit out of each other. And I think the first fight was more of like more emotional. And I feel like they wanted to kill each other. And this one is more about the title and making the big bucks. And with all that said, I'm going to go with Colby Covington.
Wow.
I think Colby Covington goes in there. I still feel like Usman is one of the best welterweights of all time already, right? But, you can still lose and be one of the best welterweights of all time. You know what I mean? GSP lost a few times, right? So it's not like you can't be. Will he be the greatest welterweight? I feel like if he loses this fight, and I believe he possibly can, he can come back and win the belt back. It's just the story it's just much better. And Colby with the title, it just, everybody will be, burning.
Everyone would lose their shit.
Yeah, they're gonna burn their house, burn their jerseys, their UFC Venom jerseys. They're gonna burn them because they don't like Colby, right? But Colby's gonna be everywhere after that because he's gonna be the undisputed champion. And I don't like a lot of the things he says, but I think it's interesting that if he holds the belt, the legit belt, it's gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings, man. And I feel like he has the capability, just as a fighter, to go out there and beat Usman. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and go with the underdog and say Colby goes in there and wins a decision.
Just want to point out, JHK is also the guy that predicted to a T Gilbert Burns, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So in case you're thinking, what are you doing, buddy? You're out to lunch. John's very good when it comes to fights. So just keep that in mind. I was close to going there. I'm playing it safe. I'll be honest. I'm playing it a bit safe. I wish I could go as bold as you, but I just there's more proof to me that Usman can win this fight. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. I will definitely get your thoughts.
And also, I don't like Colby's like his political stuff, and like I hate.
Oh yeah, we know that.
I hate politics. You know what I mean? Like I don't even get involved in that stuff. But looking at this fight, man, if you're gonna go with the underdog pick, and what's the odds right now? Did we put up the odds yet? Do they have odds?
I don't think they have odds. Right? We do.
They do have odds.
Yeah, Usman minus 280.
Oh, I would put money on Colby right now, man. I think, like you said, Colby, if he loses this fight, where does he go, man? He is all in this fight. He has to win this fight. He has to become the champion. Because if he doesn't, who is he going to fight next? I don't even think the UFC will be interested in him anymore after this if he loses. So, he can go other places, but it won't be the UFC. And I feel like Colby wants to be with the UFC. He wants to be the UFC champion, and he wants to make money as the UFC champion. And if he can't be that, then what can he do? I'm pretty sure he's a smart guy. He has probably other things going on in his life. Maybe he could do those betting shows or something like that.
He'd be like Chael Sonnen and just be a media personality or something for
he can, man. He can.
Yeah, not at ESPN though. They won't let him in, but
he can. But
I love anywhere else. We'll see.
I love the fight, man. We'll see what happens.
Okay, last thing about this card, and then we'll get to questions. And we've gone over a little bit, but this is such a big fight. We had to get everything. How much you want to bet this card doesn't happen in New York? Because
it won't happen.
That's something I feel like people are, they were talking about at the beginning, but not so much now because of Michael Chandler saying, I'm not getting vaccinated. You think Colby's vaccinated? Especially being in Florida?
Yes. He's vaccinated. Come on.
But it's a political thing, though. A lot of the Republicans are kind of like, in the U.S., a lot of them don't want to get vaccinated. So
I heard a lot of the Republicans are vaccinated and then go out in public and say no. Media forums.
It's kind of, from what I've seen from some of the reading, and let me know in the chat if any of you guys are following politics. I've been following it. It seems like it's 50-50. There's some who are and some who aren't. I'm not sure. I'll have to see what's going on. But I know if, like I said, if they take Gaethje and Chandler off that card or they move that fight, that's a big blow to that card. I could see them maybe moving it. And, I'm hearing some rumblings, maybe, maybe doing it in Florida, maybe doing it in Texas where you don't have to worry about that. Right. So,
and I was talking to Eric Nixick recently, and he told me that even the coaches, they can't even go to the fights if they're not vaccinated in New York. Right. Yeah. So if the coaches can't go, that, and not everybody's vaccinated, right? A lot of people don't believe in being vaccinated, and that's your choice. But if New York says that you can't go, and Dana White has come out and said that he's not going to force any of his employees to get vaccinated, but does he consider the fighters his employees? That's the whole thing right there, right? So we'll see what happens. But like you said, my rumblings that I've heard too on my side is that New York is not going to be the location. They're probably going to end up doing it in Vegas, man, because that's just the best place to do it.
I would agree with that. Let's get into questions. Start with Antoine. Good morning, guys. Since we're talking about welterweights, since Kevin Lee versus Daniel Rodriguez is official for August 28th, who do you guys have in that fight? Kevin coming off a decent layoff. It's a tough one. D-Rod is a very, very durable guy. He will put it into a war. If Kevin's smart, he wrestles this fight. He uses his wrestling. He takes it out. On paper, Kevin Lee is the better fighter. D-Rod's kind of a bigger welterweight as well, so there could be some problems there. I'm going to pick Kevin just based off paper, but it's a 50-50 fight just with the injuries and layout. But I want to remind people, who did Kevin Lee lose to in his last fight? Because we think people are looking at the resume and saying, hey, he's lost a couple. He lost to Charles freaking Oliveira. Like, don't forget that, people. He just lost to one of the best fighters in the world. So Daniel Rodriguez is definitely a step down from that. So
Daniel Rodriguez on the danger factor for Kevin Lee is at about an 8. You know what I mean? The dude just has serious power in his hands. And it's not like in his kicks, in his hands, right? So he could clip Kevin Lee. You know what I mean? Kevin Lee, I feel like he's going to go in there and utilize his skill set, which is, like you said, the wrestling, the takedowns. They go in there and just beat him, ground and pound, probably win a decision. I feel like Daniel Rodriguez is tough enough to not get submitted or get TKO'd.
Let's go to Euro. What's good, you guys? What's good, Euro? Always appreciate the support, buddy. Every week, every live stream, it seems. This guy's everywhere. Appreciate it. Cole Shelton. Good to hear from the great Cole Shelton. By the way, props to Cole. Breaking some great news this week. Dan Hooker, Nasrat Hakparas, Cole Shelton got it first. That's why you got to follow him. Cole Shelton 91 on Twitter. One of the best out there. Just a great guy, and a guy I got to play golf with soon. We'll figure that out, Cole. I had a 3-1 Colby going into the fifth. A lot of media and fans seem to think it was forced shutout for Usman because of who they think Colby is, just like the RDA fight. Yeah, go look at MMA decisions. Go look at Rafael dos Anjos, Colby Covington, and you'll see who thought RDA won that fight. Absolutely not. Ridiculous. I don't think any. It was close, but it definitely was not a fight that anyone. I remember watching thinking Colby clearly won that. But there's people who don't like Colby, and that's why they're picking against him. So there you go. Euro, kind of an off-the-wall question. Maybe John can answer this one. Have you ever been to DC? Just moved here from Chicago, trying to see what's around. Never lived there, or never never even been to DC before.
Well, I guess you could just go to all the Smithsonian is pretty nice to visit, man. That's a pretty dope spot to go to. But other than that, it's just historic stuff, and just don't get arrested in DC, man. That's what I heard.
We're going to skip Noah's question because we kind of already answered it. Lucas, do you think Darren Till brings enough to the table to challenge for the middleweight title? We're going to see how this fight goes because he's fighting a wrestler. He's fighting a guy that did a very good job in his last fight of neutralizing his opponent's stand-up abilities in Kevin Holland. Can he do the same thing to Till? We'll see. Did you catch? I didn't watch all of Till's interview, but I did know that, make a note that I guess he's still having issues with his collarbone. It's like, ugh. He should win. He should beat Brunson. That's my thinking is if it stays standing, I give Till a very good advantage there. But I will say, I will say it depends how he looks in this fight. If he squeaks out a decision or he, looks a little bit lackluster in this fight with Brunson, I'll say no. But if he goes out there and knocks out Derek Brunson, then yeah, absolutely he can challenge for the title. But it's going to be tough to see. We'll see how he looks because he's had a lot of injuries in his very young career. Darren Till, that is. What do you think?
Man, I think Derek Brunson beats Darren Till. I feel like Derek Brunson has the style to beat him, as long as he just doesn't play around on the feet too much, clinches, wrestles. I think that's going to be the game plan for Brunson. Darren Till, it all depends on styles, right? Like, can he challenge for the middleweight title? Of course he can. Why not? You know what I mean? It's just that he has to win fights, and then has to be a sitting champion that's willing to stand and trade with him, which right now you do have one, but I feel like if you compare striking with Till versus Adesanya, come on. Let's be real. Like Adesanya's he's on Pluto and Darren Till's on Jupiter. You know what I mean? Like it's two totally different planets right there.
Noah says one judge has it 2-2, another judge had it 3-1 Usman, and then the last judge had it 3-1 Colby. I mean, you can't get more down the line and closer than that. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's always good to look at that stuff because again, revisionist history is a very bad thing in MMA these days.
No one knows what's up.
Euro says he has it 2-2 with Colby winning in the fifth before Usman took over. I would agree with that. The Burns fight made me... Sorry, I'm running through these quickly there. Mike doing some magic here behind the scenes, dealing with my fast talking. The Burns fight made me an Usman fan because I thought Burns was a live dog and could win. Yeah, I think Usman won a lot of people over. We talked about it, right? That was sort of a breakthrough performance for Usman. He's had some good wins, but to finish Burns the way he did, super, super impressive. Noah, again, I don't like the fact that Usman chose to fight Masvidal again when he knew that he could be a much easier fight. Would have rather seen him fight Leon. No doubt it was avoiding the Colby rematch. It was money, though, too. Like, Masvidal is still living off whatever clout he had from 2019. It was a better payday, easier fight. We're kind of going through this right now with Dustin Poirier, right? Because there's rumblings that he might fight Nate Diaz and fighting Oliveira. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's just, if these guys want to get paid, it just speaks more to the lack of pay in MMA. And that's a podcast we could do on its own. That's why these guys are taking these easier fights. Who wouldn't? If someone told you, think about this. Look at this from a job standpoint. If someone went to you right now and say, "Hey, look, you're going to switch jobs. Let's just pretend we're talking about jobs here. You're going to switch jobs. You get to work less hours, and we're going to pay you more." What would you take? Or do you want to stay in your current job and get paid less and work more? Of course, you're going to take the easier route. Like that's the equivalent of what it is basically. Yeah, and I mean, no disrespect towards Nate Diaz, but I don't know how he beats Dustin Poirier. He's not knocking him out or anything. Anyways, Roman, if Usman was still with Henry Hooft, I would have given the edge to Colby in the rematch, but given that he's become with Whitman, it's extremely hard to go against him. Well, yes, the stand-up has improved, but saying that, Henry Hooft's still an amazing coach. And
amazing, dude.
Yeah,
Amazing,
he's one
phenomenal.
of the best.
Dude,
though I think
fighters are rolling into Sanford right now, dude. Like at a
there was another
crazy
one the
rate.
other day. Christos Yagos was one I just saw
Yeah.
the other day who's now training over there. So that'll be interesting as well.
Crazy rate, dude, of like just even like the Russians and the Dagestanis and like the Europeans are flocking over there now because you got to be somewhere in the US to fight. So that's what's happening. Henry Hoof, man, he's created a machine over there just like in such a short period of time. America Top Team took so long to become who they are, man. Henry Hoof did it in like what, 5 years, like since the Black Zillions, 10 years now. So man, go back and watch that season of Black Zillions versus America Top
So
Team.
weird to
That's
watch
one
that
of
now,
the,
right?
yeah, because you got Usman and Luque and you got all those guys, man. And pretty much those are the guys that are dominating, the ones from Black Zillions on that show. So
Noah says 3-1 Colby as well. I think Colby is going to be more patient this time around because I think Colby's path to victory is the decision. Oh, absolutely. I don't think Colby's finishing Usman. Colby's not much of a finisher. And I mean no disrespect by that. It's just there's certain fighters who have power and all that, and Colby's not really one of them.
well, that's what all the porn stars say, right?
There you go.
My dad joke.
No, I like that. That's good. Cole Shelton, as I'm choking here. Cole Shelton, didn't mean to tie that into the porn star thing, by the way. Cole Shelton, I wouldn't be surprised if Usman retires if he wins. He's talked about retirement pretty often, and there isn't much left for him. That's an interesting take, and that's something I didn't even think of. Now, here's okay. From what I said earlier about Colby, if he leaves, if Usman retires, Colby's sticking around. He's sticking around because I think he knows that he could probably beat most of those guys in the division that are still left. So that is a wrinkle. And you know what? I think you're right about that. Because look, Usman can't move up. He's not going to fight his buddy Israel Adesanya. I don't think there's any other like money fights. Maybe if Rockhold wins, maybe Usman moves up to like have like a money fight with Rockhold, but then they train together. So no, I don't see that being a thing. Plus I think Rockhold's getting knocked out by Strickland. Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, what does Usman need to accomplish at this point? Because what's left for him after this? Leon, Luque, is he going to want to fight his buddy Luque, who's not like a big name? You're 100% right, Cole. Cole Shelton's always on the money with this stuff. I think that's a very strong possibility, to be honest.
Wonder Boy messed up, man, by losing that fight. Because if he would have won that.
Did you see my interview with Wonder Boy? I'm not trying to self-plug here, but I found it a little interesting that Wonder Boy kind of was making some excuses, like which you don't see too often from him because he's a very good. He's a pretty polite guy, but he kind of said, he basically said that Burns had like he didn't fight him. He just like, he held him to the ground. But at the same time, I'm kind of thinking like, dude, you got to work on your takedown defense against a guy like Gilbert Burns. Like, how did you not know he was not going to do that? So that was a little interesting, but I also understand Wonder Boy's frustration as well, because like he's been at the top for a while. He arguably beat Woodley in that second fight. So I don't know. I see both sides of it as well.
Yeah, man, it's hard to say because Wonder Boy's in kind of like a similar position as if Colby loses this fight where he would be. So it sucks to be in those positions. But I think Wonder Boy, if he wins a couple more fights, he could be back in the title picture, man.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
If he wins, but that's a big if at this point. I mean, I don't know. Like, how is he do? The fight to make, by the way, if they're looking, well, actually, there's a couple fights. I think Wonder Boy could fight Chiesa. I think that's a cool matchup. Don't be surprised, though. Khamzat Chimaev beats Jingling Lee. Wonder Boy Chimaev. I could see them doing that. Wonder Boy's a big name. You got to get something out of him at this point. And Chimaev, I think that's a fight that would really propel him up, right? So
yeah, for sure.
That's my theory. Okay, 10th realm. Barbosa Chikaze fight is down to 7 fights. What happens to the event? Was there another fight that was out? What's one that's happened now? That's next weekend's card, right? The 28th.
It seems like it.
Yeah, it's next weekend's card. So what? Let me just look on Tapology and figure out what fight fell out. Oh, Caitlin Vieira and McMahon's out. Mario Batista's out of his fight as well. And yeah, there's been a bunch. I mean, it'll still happen. It's a fight night card. It's not a pay-per-view, right? So I don't think they care. Plus, I think they're going to they can always add some Ultimate Fighter fights to that as well, right? If they wanted to. They've done that before. Because that's supposed to be like the tough finale, right?
Yeah. So they could.
Is this card's on the 28th, which is what date is that? Or that is a Saturday, I guess, isn't it? Or yeah, it is.
It's a normal day. It's a normal day for that fight. 7 fights, man. They're gonna have to add some. They're gonna do some patchwork on that. I think they're gonna get some people in Vegas to step in somehow, some way. But who knows? They might just put on 7 fights. I think the UFC is just obligated to put on events, right? Not a certain number of fights per card. So I don't know. This is the problem that you run into, right? When you're having shows every single weekend.
Yeah.
right? And you know, and COVID's going on at the same time, you know what I mean? But
You're bringing in guys to the UFC who aren't ready.
yeah, and
That's unfortunately what's happened. That's why, like, I was talking to Jim West about this yesterday and how Bellator does a different model where, like, if you look at the Bellator cards, like, they'll have like their mainstay roster fighters usually on their main card. Prelims are regional fighters. They always do that. So if you're a fighter and you're on a Bellator undercard, you can be like, I'm a Bellator fighter, but you're not really, because like a lot of those guys are just like one-off fights, but it means the same thing. Like, I think Bellator should be like, this is part of our challengers card, like Strikeforce challengers. Remember when they used to do that? Like, so then you can differentiate between the two, because who's to say a guy who's 2-1 fighting on the first prelim fight of a Bellator card is any different than Ryan Bader, right? Like, that's where it's different. But tying this into the UFC, I think the UFC's gone that way too, where it's like, you're a UFC caliber fighter. No, you're a fighter who happened to be in Vegas, happened to have his medicals done, happened to be off a win, and sometimes not even. Sometimes they get guys off losses, and you get signed, and then they go 0-2, and they'll never see the UFC again. I mean, the standard of getting in the UFC now is much easier than it was years ago because they're doing so many cards. But again, they're just trying to milk whatever they can out of that ESPN deal and do their cards every week.
I hate seeing that, man. Because
so do I. I want anticipation. I miss those days where you'd have to wait a couple weeks to build up to like a GSP and BJ Penn fight or something. You know what I mean? Like, where you're really like, just you want to see it. I know there's gonna be people in the chat being like, well, if you don't like it, don't like. No, it's just it's tougher to keep track for everyone, even us. Like, there's like, when I'm doing previews, it's like, I've never heard of this guy, and he's fought 3 times in the UFC, but it's because he's been buried on the prelims, and he had a fight that, or you know, whoever that hasn't been that notable. It's just too much. They got to space it out. They get more fans that way. It'd be easier for the fans to keep track.
I also hate that, you know, like you said earlier, guys will come in and fight twice and they get cut and then never get a chance at the UFC again. And we see this time and time again, and guys kind of like taking short notice fights too and losing, or, you know, like Kai Kamaka, you know what I mean? Like he fought out.
Yeah,
his
that
contract.
was dumb. He had a decision.
They didn't, but I don't know if they re-signed him or not, because he just fought out his contract. And I see a lot of guys fighting out their contract. Austin Hubbard, you talk to him, he's fighting out his contract. What, this weekend? Yeah, he's fighting this weekend, right? That guy should be re-signed, right? I don't see why they wouldn't re-sign him. He's still a young guy, you know, developing. But the thing is, I hate the most is guys that only get like a couple fights and they get released, and we didn't see the best version of them yet, and they just came in too early. Chase Hooper is a perfect example of that. I think, you know, they're going to
Chase is a bit of a weird case. I mean, that we could go into detail on that on its own, because the problem was Chase actually he won a Contender Series, got a developmental deal, won a couple fights, and then they're like, well, what do we do with him? We can't just keep him on this developmental thing. So they put him in the UFC, but he's so young. The problem was he probably shouldn't have been on Contender Series. Maybe they should have like an age limit or something, you know, to let you develop. But anyways, that we're taking up too much time. So that was sort of my thoughts on that. Roman says Hooker hack press. Hooker all day. Hooker wins that fight all day. Absolutely, especially if it stays standing, he'll knock out Matt Nasser at hack press. That's good matchmaking, by the way, because hack press, a lot of people said this guy's the future. He's had a few missteps along the way. Dan Hooker needed a fight like this, right? People talk about, especially the you know, the Habib fans and all that. They're like, Hooker sucks. He should be not even talking about fighting Islam. Well, no, he's losing to really good guys. Last time I checked, Michael Chandler just fought for the UFC title, and you're saying this guy sucks. Yes, he got finished in the first round, but it's Michael Chandler, so. Anyways, that's all I got to say on that. But yeah, Dan Hooker, I know you're taking Hooker on that as well. By the way, Roman did reach out to Rakic's management. Haven't heard anything back. I'm trying to get something with him because I don't know who he's fighting. If Yuri's the backup, who the heck is Rakic fighting now?
I don't even know. Look at the lineup. It's who can he fight?
And apparently, I talked to Volkan Ozdemir. Apparently, that fight with Ankalaev isn't 100% done yet. So maybe there's a wild card there. Maybe you could get one of the Rakic fighting one of those guys. I don't know. So we'll see. We're going to skip your question because we already talked about the wrestling factor in this fight. Noah says if Colby wins, he's going to turn the division upside down. I can't wait to see what he would say potentially with Joe Rogan in a post-fight octagon. Yeah, it's going to be bananas, man. If that happens, we'll see. If Colby loses and Usman retires, what happens? Already talked about that. We feel like Colby would still stick around. Colby versus Leon for the vacant title. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm going too fast here. Sorry, Mike, my bad. Colby versus Leon for the vacant title if Usman retires after the fight, but I see Kamaru wanting to fight different challenges, potentially Luque, Chiesa, etc. Well, he's not fighting Chiesa. Chiesa blew his opportunity. Luque, you could do, but like, I could kind of see Cole's point as well. Like, what's the upside in fighting Luque at this point? He's a former training partner. I'm sure they're friendly with each other, right? Like, I don't think it's Usman's top priority to fight a guy like Luque, even though his manager is saying, well, of course he's more, which I talked about this last week. That was such a dumb tweet. Usman's manager, who by the way also manages Vicente Luque, thinks that Luque deserves a shot more than Leon Edwards. No shit. Of course he's going to say that. That would be a bad manager if he didn't say that. So, but I think if you're Usman, what's the incentive in having that fight? Unless you really want to be the greatest of all time, then you don't worry about money. You worry about, racking up those title defenses, because that's always been the thing that holds over Usman's head that GSP has, is that he had way more title defenses, right? So that's something you got to look at. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a wild card to see what happens post this fight, so to speak. Ursel, hope I'm saying that right. I'm low-key becoming a fan of Colby. After all of his media he puts out, kind of funny, want to see him win. It's 50-50. People love some of the stuff that Colby says. People think it's cringe. Teach their own. That's what I mean. You're not going to find anyone more polarizing than Colby Covington. What else do we got as far as other questions here? Trevor Whitman might have Usman thinking he can beat him standing up. I'm sure Trevor does think that, because Usman finished him last time without Trevor Whitman, and now with him, I'm sure he thinks that's as well. Andy says, hell yeah, JHK, Colby for the win this time. I think the trilogy would be a massive thing for the... Oh, yeah, that's the other thing, a trilogy. So, yeah, if Usman loses, then, yeah, they might do the trilogy. We'll see. Poor Leon Edwards. That happens.
Yeah, and Colby will, dangle that trilogy in front of everybody's faces, and it would be fun to watch that, for sure.
Lucas, prediction for this weekend's fight between HK's own Palanikov versus Brahim. I always pronounce his last name wrong. Ramiz Brahimaj. I don't know why I can't say Brahima.
Yeah.
Ramiz Brahima. I don't know why I always say that wrong. I got Ramiz in that fight.
I'm taking Sasha in the fight. I think Ramiz is going to stand and trade with him. And Sasha has a little better stand-up, right? I think he's more crisp on the feet, a little bit lighter on the feet. But if it goes to the ground, that's when it's going to get interesting. And Brahima does have a lot of submission wins. So we'll see, man. But Brahima likes to brawl too. So that's another thing. If Sasha could drag him in, pull him into a brawl, then we're going to see a hell of a fight between these two. But I'm taking Sasha in that fight.
We'll skip Roman's question because that's stating the obvious. Antoine Willis, if Kamaru gets his 5th title defense, it officially makes him the 2nd greatest welterweight of all time. Tyron had 4 title defenses and 1 was a draw. Sure. Totally fine with that.
Wow.
Which is interesting. I thought Woodley had more, but I guess not, because there were some gaps in between some of those fights as well, I guess. Where does Vicente fit in all this? He's sitting there at number 4 and is a former training partner of the current champion. Well, we'll see. I think Luque would be smart to fight Leon Edwards and do a rematch there. I think if they're smart, you do that. I know for Leon, it's again, another fight. He shouldn't have to, but obviously the UFC wasn't very, willing to give him that shot to begin with. And I don't know, unless his management's been told something else, do that fight, because if there's an injury in the fight, you could always, pull someone into the main event if Colby gets injured or something. So I don't know. We'll see. Whose title run was more impressive, Lawler, Woodley, or Usman now? Probably Usman, because of the way he's finishing fights. I don't know. Subjective.
I'd probably take Usman. Lawler had some incredible fights, but Usman just has been dominant. And you got to look at the dominant aspect of it. I think Usman has been much better. And Woodley, man, he had those 2 fights with Wonder Boy, which are arguably, controversial decisions. So, yeah, I'll take Usman.
Henry Hooft is an incredible coach, but Usman is just better with Whitman. Well, I wouldn't say he's better. I think Whitman's utilized some tools of Usman a little bit better. I don't think one's better than the other per se. Sinister, good to hear from you, buddy. One of my guys from my Patreon. He says, what happens when Volk beats Ortega and decisively beats Max in an inevitable trilogy? What happens to Max? I always said Max can always move up to 155. I think you'll see him in that weight class in the future. There's a lot of big fights for him. That's one difference between 155 and 145. Even though there's some really good fighters in 145, I think there's more money fights, so to speak, at 155. So I think that's an option there. We'll see. I mean, that's a lot of big feats to overcome for him to beat Ortega and to beat Max again. Very tough to do, but we talked about this fight a while back. I think Volkanovski wins.
I think if Max, loses to Volkanovski, and we don't even know if that fight's going to even happen. Even if he loses and he goes up to 155, I think it would be perfect timing for him to fight Conor again at 155 when Conor comes back. I think that's a fight that they both should be looking into in the future. Max Conor rematch if Conor comes back. I don't know.
Let's get to Cole's question, then we'll take a little bit of a break into our underdog picks. One of the worst signings in recent memory is Martin Sano Jr., Nick Diaz's buddy on UFC 266. He's 0-2-1 in his last 3 and 4-2-1 as a pro and hasn't fought since 2017. Him or the Anderson Silva's buddy who fought Lando Venata. Remember him? Like the guy had lost a bunch of fights by submission, and I think Lando submitted him in the first round or something. Who is that guy? I got to find that out right now. There's been a couple bad signings like that where it's just like, what are you doing? Like if you have that little of a record, it shouldn't make any sense. What was the guy's name he fought? Marcos Mariano, who is also on the card as Silva, 34 years old, 7-6 record. He ended up going 0-2 in the UFC. He got submitted in the first round by Lando Venata. Remember that guy? It's like a buddy.
Yeah, if you're getting submitted by Lando Venata, then maybe he might not be UFC caliber.
Okay, so let's get to our underdog picks this week. We actually have PFL on Thursday, Bellator on Friday, and Saturday we have the Cannonier and Gastelum fights. A lot to choose from here. There was a fight I was looking at on one of these cards, and I remember thinking there could be an upset here. Let me just figure out what it is. By the way, Logan Storley, a -1800 on the Bellator card this week. Poor Dante Schro in that one. Oh, I know my pick. I'm going Czech Congo for the upset over Haratonov in Bellator on Saturday. Haratonov's been knocked out plenty of times. Congo, I know, has also not looked great as well. I know Congo's a lot older at 46. I'll take my chances. Heavyweight MMA, I'll take the French fighter in this one to pull it off. And looks like you picked him as well. So there we go. I still got to make my pick. There you go. It's staring me right in the face. James, make your pick. Make your pick. I'll do it. It's on my list of things to do. I'll take Czech Congo. Look, a little bit more active, a little bit more better competition, I think, overall. I'll take my chances and take Czech Congo in a very boring fight to get it done. That's going to be my underdog pick. Who do you like as far as underdog picks?
Well, on UFC this weekend,
Sasha Palnikov.
No. I'm going to take Marco Massin. I think Marco Massin goes in there and steamrolls. Oh, no, he's the favorite.
He's the favorite. I was going to say. I was going to interrupt you there, but I didn't want to be rude.
My bad. You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to take Brandon Royval for the upset versus Pantoja.
That was what I was looking at too. Yeah, Brandon Royval is such an unpredictable guy. The only reason I didn't pick Brandon Royval in that fight, even though Pantoja does have 2 wins over the current champ, how often does Brandon Royval win his fights? By submission. Alexander Pantoja, never been submitted. You never know. Anything can happen, but still, I look at that and I go, that might be tough for Brandon to get the win. But look, if anyone can pull off an upset in a flyweight fight, it is Brandon Royval. Tim Elliott, Kai Kara France, he was underdogs in both those fights.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. So, with that and if you go down the card, you got Roosevelt Roberts versus Ignacio Bahamon. What is it? Bahamondes?
I don't know. I butchered it and someone gave me a hard time about it. So
yeah. Ignacio Bahamondes. I think I'll take him. I actually picked him as the underdog to win that fight straight up. Ignacio Bahamondes.
Roosevelt Roberts has been maybe one of the most disappointing fighters in the octagon. Just gets submitted quickly. There's some issue there with him. I don't know what it is. This guy Ignacio, man, he's long. I was going to say it's actually one of the few fights where Roosevelt's not going to be the bigger fighter. Right? Usually he is. Crazy. Exactly. He's 6'3" for a lightweight. Jesus. What type of metabolism does that guy have? He probably eats McDonald's and it just goes right through him.
So, I hope not. But I don't want that visual. I'm sorry about that. I think this guy. A lot of people are picking Roosevelt to win because he is the veteran. He has faced tougher competition, but I think Ignacio has the skills to go in there and get the upset in this fight. I'm excited to see this matchup. Actually, it kind of will show us where Roberts is because he kind of went up there and fought the upper level of the division a little bit and kind of fell back. So we'll see if he can come back in this fight. But I think Ignacio can do it.
Let's get to actually before we get into a couple more questions because we're gonna wrap things up here. We gotta take up a little bit earlier. Just want to mention this quickly. Again, we're not a political show, but Marcel, our buddy John, he's a good friend of both of ours. There was that whole thing yesterday with the Paddy Pimblett thing. Just want to kind of give a shout out to Marcel. Does a great job. Look, what happened yesterday, I'll break it down. And I'm going to go into more detail on this on my Patreon. If you want to sign up, patreon.com/LynchOnSports. I'm actually going to have Adam Martin on who does a podcast with Marcel. And we're going to just dig into that a little bit. But lay off the guy. Look, Marcel did the right thing. He got legit info, put it out there, said Paddy Pimblett was going to be off the card. Something changed in between there, and now Paddy's good to go. But don't pile on the guy. I know a lot of people love Paddy Pimblett. I know Paddy came out and said, no, I'm still fighting. Marcel's not the guy to put out fake news or bad information there. He had information that was correct at the time. Things change. You got to learn how reporting works. I saw some people saying, well, you got to ask Patty if it's legit. No, you don't. That's not how reporting works. Sometimes reporters find out stuff before fighters do. So Marcel did the correct thing here. I didn't like the way that whole thing went down. Just want to, give a shout out if he's watching. Marcel, we support you, man. You're doing a great job. Ignore the haters. He didn't even need to put that statement out. I don't know if you saw his apology, but he didn't even need to do that. Marcel's the man, and just support good work in this industry, and Marcel's one of them. That's all I got to say on that.
Definitely one of the best guys out there to follow, and he provides so much news, man. Like, how could you not believe the guy? You know what I mean? I know personally that he does fact check everything. He background checks all the information that he gets. So whenever he puts something out there on his social media, I believe it 100%. And yeah, man, I think it's just fans mostly. I know Patty's been, saying that he's a shite. Is shite like a British term?
I think so. Right? And Patty's a great guy, by the way. I spoke to him last week. Like, great interview. Like, I get, if someone's saying that you're not fighting, I can understand that it upsets him. But I'm sure if these two actually sat down and talked, Patty would see Marcel's side of things, and it would all get hashed out. But man, it's so annoying how I love how people on Twitter want to tell us how the media is supposed to be run. Leave it to the professionals. Stop worrying about how things are covered. Stop worrying about all this nonsense. So again, I'll go into more detail on this on my Patreon, because I do have a lot of thoughts on it, and some other people in the industry and how they handled it as well. I'll get into that too. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. All right, let's get a couple more questions here. Evlaw posted on his IG that he's back in the US for fight camp at ATT. Who's he fighting? Topuria, Yusuf? What do you think, guys? Topuria's in Spain right now. He's not in camp, so I don't think he's fighting him. Maybe not Yusuf Zalal. What's his name? Sadiq Yusuf. I think that could be a fight for him. We'll see.
Yeah,
I like watching that guy fight. He's a Danny Rube guy, right? Evlaw, is he not?
Yeah, he is.
Got to get an interview with him. By the way, shout out to Danny Rube. Hooked me up with Armin Saryukin yesterday. Awesome interview. That was really good. Have you talked to Armin before? I believe you have, haven't you?
No, I've never spoken with him.
Really good interview. Really enjoyed our chat yesterday. His English is very good, and yeah, really good interview there. So definitely looking forward to that. Lucas says, any up and coming Asian fighters do you think can make it big to the UFC? Make it big in the UFC. So they're already in the UFC. Who can make it big? John, we'll leave that to you.
Oh, they're already in the UFC?
Yeah.
Well, he mentioned one of them.
Yeah, Sumajari.
Sumidari, you got Yan. She's still a top contender. But coming up, like developing right now, you got Taun Jung, the light heavyweight. He's pretty good. His teammate, Chunyoung Park, decent. He got a big win against who was that? The guy that's teammates with Yusuf. So Sadiq Yusuf, what's his name? I forgot, from the Contender Series. But a lot of people counted him out on that fight. He went in there and pieced him up for 3 rounds. So yeah, those are 2 guys that I could think off the top of my dome. But most of the other Asian fighters that are coming up that actually have some steam, they're signed, man. They're all signed. Yeah. They're signed to like one championship, or they're signed to the UFC. So yeah, those are the only ones I could think of off the top of my dome.
We'll get one more question. If you guys were fighters, this is Antoine's question. We're going to end here. And again, if we didn't get your question, just post it in the comments or hit us up on social media. We'll answer it there. If you guys were fighters, what would you care more about, legacy or making as much money as possible? I'm going to give an answer that might surprise people. To me, it's legacy. To me, when I'm done this life, when I'm done, I would rather people remember me than to talk about how much money I made. Because at the end of the day, money can come and go. There's different ways of making money. I think the fighters are underpaid. Again, we could do a whole podcast on that in itself, but I would want the legacy to be remembered more so than how much money I made, me personally, because I think I'd figure out a way I'm a businessman at heart, so I think I'd figure out a way to make more money on its own. Not discrediting what a Dustin Poirier might do against Nate Diaz. That's fine. His legacy is already cemented, but I would go for legacy. What would you go for?
I'll go for the money, because when you die, the money can stay, and the money can help people, help your family, help your daughter, help your son, help your wife, sister. Those are people that you really want to help in your life. And if you have the opportunity to make as much money as possible and help them, because at the end of the day, those are the people that are going to be standing next to you on your deathbed, not the other people that are watching you from the stands. I know they're important for you to create your income, but still, man, at the end of the day, money is the most important thing, and assets and all of that good stuff. So I think it's all about the money.
There you go. Once again, John and I disagreeing, but that's why you tune in here. Can't agree on everything. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back here a week today previewing another upcoming notable fight. JHK, anything you got to plug before we get out of here, and then we'll get going?
No, man, just go to my YouTube page, John Hyon Ko or JHK.
Congrats on 20K, by the way, on SCMP. I saw that the other day. That's great.
Yes, for
Part
sure.
of that, you're a
Thanks,
big
man.
part of that, man. It's great to see.
You know, there's a lot of people, Tom Taylor and you know, Nick Atkin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those guys, shout out to them. But yeah, that's it. Just go to the YouTubes and hey, make sure to subscribe to this bitch right here.
Of course, exactly. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I got to go do another interview. Check out my interview with Anthony Smith. Just posted it today on Low Kick MMA, at Lynch on Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Shout out to Michael for doing a great job. See you next week, everyone, and enjoy the fights this weekend.
You didn't break my face. I got right up and protested it right away. That was a fake stoppage, fake ref, fake fight. Wait till I see you next time. Wait till I see you next time, Marty Fake Newsman. You're dead. You're dead. We got